impact real-world rule of money for today. This is a principle that's simply taught. We call ABC 1, 2, 3. And the reason we call it ABC 1, 2, 3 is basically there are 3 ways that money grows, A, B, C, and there's 3 ways that money is taxed, 1, 2, and 3. And by learning about each one at a time, first A, then B, then C, then 1, then 2, then 3, then we have at least a surface level understanding of each one, and then it makes it a little bit easier to look at the combinations of each, with 1 picking the letter, and then second is picking the number, and with very rare exception, every single combination exists, and several fit into that category. And so the ABC part is fixed, indexed, and variable. But this is the way that money grows. And so just to give us an example of, let's use the market is going up 20% and down 20%, and we can compare what each of these would do in a market situation like that. So first of all, in a fixed account, if the market goes up 20%, would someone in a fixed account get to keep 20%? No, they would probably get 1 or 2. A fixed account declares a rate at the beginning of the year, and that's what the rate is for the rest of the following year. But then the reason that people will put money there is because when the market does negative 20, they won't lose anything. And so they call it a safe investment. But as we know from learning the Welp formula and actually plugging some numbers into it, you have to get somewhere in the range of 4 to 5%, especially depending on how it's taxed, 4 to 5% in a fixed account to even keep up with inflation and taxes. But that's how a fixed account works. Then you have an indexed account that has a floor and a ceiling strategy, where if the market is up 20%, it would hit a ceiling somewhere between 12 and 15%, and that would be the maximum that someone would earn that year. But then if the market was negative 20, the worst that they would do is 0%. And so as the picture shows, the gray line in the background is the variable account. If you actually grab that variable line and slid it over and made it gray, that's where that line comes from. And so this shows what an indexed account would do in that exact same environment, hypothetically, where each year it goes up, the index goes up to the ceiling, but then if the market goes down, it locks in the gain up to that point, and then is at 0% if the annual return is negative. And each of these we'll get into in other lessons, but this is just the surface of it. And then variable accounts are tied to a mutual fund, a stock, any sort of market. It could be a real estate market. It could be, that someone invests in businesses, but it's something that is volatile and doesn't have any sort of built-in protection. But then, of course, there's potential for higher returns. And so in this one, using the same example, if the market goes up 20%, we get to keep 20%, and if the market's down 20%, we would lose 20%. So that's A, B, and C, fixed, indexed, and variable. And just as, history lesson, the indexed accounts first kind of came on the scene in about 1995, and then by 1997 there were a few more, but very few. And of course, just for a word of clarification, an indexed account and an indexed fund are not the same thing. An indexed fund is going to be like a fund that follows the S&P or a fund that follows the Dow, but that's both positives and negatives. That's an indexed fund, but an indexed account uses this concept of indexing, which is the floor and the ceiling. So indexed accounts, though, didn't really start gaining popularity until they got a little bit of attention after 2000, 2001, 2002 in that downturn, but really started getting a lot of attention in 2009, 2010 with the downturn in 2008 because of the built-in protection of it and the less that people have to babysit them and watch them on a daily basis. And so, but all three have their place: fixed, indexed, and variable is A, B, and C. Then we go to the 1, 2, 3, 1 being a taxed now account, 2 being taxed later, and 3 being tax advantage. So a taxed now account, what that means is, and what the picture is showing is, if someone puts in a lump sum of money, at the far left, way down when it's at 0, they put in some money, it grows and it earns interest, but then that interest that we earn is taxable. So we would actually get, if we earned $1,000 on our tax now investment that year, we would actually get a 1099 at the end of the year that says you earned $1,000 in this investment, and it's a taxed annual account. You need to take this when you do your taxes and input this number as a gain that will be taxable, and that gain is added to our taxes for the year. And so the thing that's that the picture is depicting is that with taxes included, it's potentially losing the buying power of it, where you don't have to pull the taxes out of the actual account that it's in to pay the taxes. It's not a charge inside of the account. And so if you had an annual statement and you were comparing them year to year to year, it wouldn't look like that line on the left. But what this is depicting is when taxes are taken out, it makes it so that that annual increase that we have, instead of the money staying in there and not having to pay taxes, we're having to get the money from somewhere to pay the taxes on that account in particular. Okay, then we have our, well, let's talk about this too. What the most common accounts in a tax now environment are going to be a savings account, a checking account, a money market account at a bank, a CD, almost any account at a bank. You have mutual funds that fall into this category as well. Okay, now tax later accounts. How tax later accounts work is money goes in up front and we get a tax deduction from the money that we put in. The money then grows, what's called tax deferred, which of course deferred is why it's called a tax later account, because we're deferring the taxes until later. And then when we get to retirement, as long as we don't take out withdrawals before age 59 and a half, then we can pull our money out penalty-free after 59 and a half, but it's not tax-free after 59 and a half. Everything that we pull out, what we put in, plus the interest we earned, plus if it's in a 401k or other matching program, what the company put in, and when plus the interest that the money earns that the company put in, everything that comes out of a tax later account is taxed, all of it. What I put in plus interest, what the company put in plus that interest, I would pay the taxes on all of it. If it's taken before age 59 and a half, then there is going to be an extra 10% penalty that I would pay for that year. So the most common in this category are going to be the 401k, a regular IRA or individual retirement account, a 403b, which are for nonprofit organizations. 401ks are for-profit organizations. 403b nonprofit. 457s fit into this category as well, which is going to be same taxation, but 457s are for government, military. Then you have KEOs and SEP IRAs, and pretty much anything that says IRA after it is in the tax later column except a Roth, and anything that starts with a 4. 401k, 403b, 457, 401a, they all fit into this middle column, and we could have a whole class just about those. But moving on to 3 in our ABC 1, 2, 3 is the tax advantage account, where we do put in after tax money. It's not an additional tax that we pay, which is sometimes a question that people have. Is I make, say, $3,000 a month from my job. I get taxed on that income that goes off to the federal and the state, and then I get to keep, say, 2,300 of that, 2,400 of that. So now the money that I have in my hands, it used to be 3,000 minus taxes. Now I have 2,400 in my hands. That's my after-tax money. I can take any amount of that I'd like and stick it into this tax advantage account, and it's considered after-tax money. So when I put it in, I don't pay an additional tax to put it in. It's considered already being taxed, and then the growth is tax deferred, or in some accounts you can actually say it's tax-free growth, and then the withdrawals that I take are tax-free, or when I access the money I don't pay taxes on it depending on where it is. And really there's one that almost qualifies as a tax advantage account, which would be municipal bonds, but you have to be careful with which ones you get, and you have to look at the growth and all of those different things, and at what levels they're tax, state or federal taxes. But the two most common that people use in the tax advantage is going to be a Roth IRA or the cash value inside of a permanent life insurance policy. So when we bring the whole picture together, you have fixed, indexed, and variable, tax now, tax later, tax advantage, and any combination can happen. There's a fixed now account, a fixed later account, a fixed advantaged account. There's a variable later, variable now, variable advantaged, indexed advantage, indexed later. The only one that does not exist where it's taxed every single year, but it has indexed growth, that doesn't exist. There's not an indexed account that's taxed now, as of right now. And so that would be a B1. We would call it B1 combination. Doesn't exist. So there you go. ABC 1, 2, 3, and that is our real world rule of money for today.